and welcome to our breakfast meeting. We're still obviously on this little screen, but one of these days we're going to get back to having all of us in a room together. I am Donna O'Donnell and your 2020 IVAR president. And like I said, it's so glad and happy to have all of you here today. I also want to take this opportunity to let everyone know that if you have any interest in attending or being a part of a committee that IVAR has, please feel free to reach out to me, to Mark, the staff, go on the IVAR website, and we would love to have you. We're lining up people for next year. IVAR is continually and constantly updating the site with lots of information, so please utilize that or reach out to one of us. Also, CAR meetings are going on this week, and next week, the real estate virtual conference. If you are a Realtor member, that's free to you. So again, this is an opportunity to, just because everything is virtual, you can register and join and watch and be a part of things and see if anything sparks your interest. So thank you and welcome again. And I'm going to turn this back to Mark.
Very good. Thank you, Donna. So today's speaker is Ms. Hafsa Kaka. But before I introduce her, let me just say this. She'll be obviously addressing issues of homelessness. She works for the city of Riverside, and this is a very complicated and oftentimes even emotional situation for all of us. We've all dealt with homelessness at some level in our lives, sometimes very directly. Even here at IVAR, we've had homeless issues where damage has been done to the property, and we've had to deal with homeless on a very real and practical basis. And it's tragic, and it's never easy. And the homelessness issue knows no boundaries. It affects young people, children, the elderly, veterans, mentally ill, substance abuse. It is wide, it is deep, and it is complicated. So with that, I'm happy to introduce our speaker today. As I said, her name is Hafsa Kaka. She is the City of Riverside's Homeless Solution Officer. In Riverside, she helps lead the Office of Homeless Solutions in a variety of efforts designed to help homeless individuals transition from the streets into a shelter, into permanent supportive housing with built-in wraparound services, and eventually onto their own residences. It's through these efforts that the homeless outreach team connects homeless individuals with services that can help them regain control in their lives. She has a master's degree in social work from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and a BA in psychology and social behavior and criminology law and society from the University of California, Irvine. And with that, I will introduce our speaker today, Ms. Hafsa Kaka. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. What a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate you prefacing the importance and the sensitivity of the issue. That was really well said, that it could be very emotional, and it is quite a community issue. First of all, let me just thank you, Donna, Mark, and the rest of you for finding interest in homelessness and inviting me to speak today to your association. As an officer of Homeless Solutions, I am dedicated to the matter of addressing homelessness. As Mark, you mentioned, I came onto the city of Riverside it's going to be a year. Prior to that, I actually worked in Santa Ana's first homeless services manager, and prior to that in LA, which has a huge homeless population with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. I like to reference that because as a native Californian, I do know that California is one of the largest community that experiences homelessness. There's many different factors to that as well. For example, we have the largest unsheltered, and a lot of folks attribute that to the weather, being that New York has the most sheltered. So when I talk about homelessness, I like to, as Mark, you did a wonderful job in sort of talking about the complexities. It really is an ecosystem of work. I'd like to kind of describe that on a macro level, and then on a micro level, I'd like to address it at the city level. And the reason I like to do that is so that I can help individuals understand that This is a broader system and there's many different complexities. So with that being said, I'll start sort of the local picture and then I'll get into the bigger picture. So our local picture, as you know, you're part of it, you experience it, you understand it. As Mark had mentioned, a lot of you have experienced issues with damages and things of that nature that may be attributed to individuals experiencing homelessness, or it may be attributed to people who are not homeless but tend to like to be out on the street, right? There is definitely a delineation of that. For the city of Riverside, the population is as such. There's something called the point in time count. And the point in time count, it happens every January, and it happens in every different community throughout the nation. And it is tasked by the Housing Urban Development, HUD, which is essentially the funding body to something called the Continuum of Care for each jurisdiction. So in Riverside County receives the funding and has created the COC per se. This body is tasked with essentially producing the point in time count, which many communities take part in. You may have taken part in it as well. It's basically a huge census in January during a 3-day period. Sometimes it's a 2-day period. And what folks do is they go out with the census and count all the homeless individuals. There's also a survey. What this does is this allows people to understand the demographics of what you're working with, which should inform you essentially how to program your services. So for example, a community will go ahead and do a point in time count, and they can find out how many veterans are in their community. This is really important because HUD, which I referenced earlier, provides something called VASH vouchers, Veterans Association Supportive Services for Housing. So then you could allocate a certain amount of housing options to veterans in specific. It also allows us to understand what is the demographics and the complexity of our population. There's something called chronic homelessness. Chronic homelessness are individuals who have been on the street for many, many years or have a comorbidity. So for example, you could be on the street, but you also have a lot of mental health, medical health, and substance abuse addiction. So you can also find out family and children, vehicular homelessness, and a plethora of other issues. So the point in time count that happened this past January in the county of Riverside provided us stats for the city of Riverside. The city of Riverside, we found that there was over 500 individuals that were unsheltered on a given night. That essentially means that we have over 500 individuals that are all on the streets. This helps us look at what sort of shelter capacity we can create and how we can create partners and collaborations with county departments to assist. But we also found that there is a good majority of individuals who also experience mental health and medical health issues, which primarily means housing is not going to be enough. You're also going to need supportive services. And so the city of Riverside has this population. What the city of Riverside also has is, in a few years ago, we created the Office of Homeless Solutions through the City Managers Initiative. I found this to be very impressive. As you know, I have worked in different communities, and I found that oftentimes the homeless lead is a leveraged position. Sometimes they'll be your police officer, sometimes they'll be your code enforcement, sometimes it's someone from, just a delegate from a city manager's office. Well, the city here actually has dedicated an entire office to address the situation, and I think that's wonderful. So I do have staff that are part of the entire Office of Homeless Solutions that include outreach workers, case management, housing authority, which I work very closely with our housing authority manager, Michelle Davis. And we work with the county in collaborating on how to address the homeless population and get them into housing. There is only one solution to homelessness. A person is no longer homeless once they're housed, permanently housed. And so while we may create shelters, we need to keep in mind that the end goal is housing individuals. As you all know, being realtors, and there's a lot of different issues and particles to housing development, things of that nature. With The homeless spectrum, we look at affordable housing, and the city has taken a lot of great initiatives to affordable housing. We have over 500 units in the pipeline, and I actually manage the front end. Housing Authority Manager manages that at back end. So the front end, a little bit, I'd like to talk about. Let's talk about what happens when you see a person experiencing homelessness, ground zero. So, when a person is experiencing homelessness, you may see potentially they may just be with a backpack, or they may have an entire encampment, or they may have maybe schizophrenia, or they may have mental or medical issues, or they may be perfectly fine and just lost their job. An individual experiencing homelessness, as Mark said, it could be anyone from all walks of life. You may not know that your neighbor from a few years ago may be in a shelter right now. I've had many people who have experienced that. And you may not know that in the future, someone may lose their job, even now with COVID being a real concern, that it's so easy to fall into homelessness. Unfortunately, there is a stigma, and I like to address that stigma. Yes, there is a group of individuals who have a more difficult time accepting services. Those are service resistant clients. And there could be a plethora of reasons that could be. It could be because of trauma, it could be because of a mental health diagnosis, or it could be simply because the system has failed them many times, or potentially family, friends have failed them. So there are specifics to a population. And then there's a population who is gun ho motivated, may have just lost their job, or maybe depressed, may have just had a divorce, doesn't know where to go, got evicted, didn't have enough funds, couldn't support themselves, ended up in their car, and now the last resort is shelter or the streets. So it's not one picture, it's many pictures. So the city of Riverside addresses all of these individuals. We have something called the Hewland Campus Collaborative, and that is sort of our campus of services in the epicenter in Ward 1. We have our Access Center, which anybody who is experiencing any kind of homelessness or has any kind of questions or even poverty can access the Access Center. Walk-ins are from 8 to 4 p.m., and all of this information is on our website. The person would find is outreach workers and case managers who could help them understand the system and the programs and services available to them. So for example, some of the programs and services, if a person is literally homeless, then the case manager and outreach worker could connect them to an actual shelter in order to ensure their safety. Number two, if a person is experiencing lack of rental assistance, then our case manager and outreach workers could connect them to a rental assistance program. Number three, donations, food stability. Number four, connections to family and reunification and trip homes, so on and so forth. We have a plethora of services. We also have an employment center where a person could come in, a resource center, and really get some on-hand support in attaining a job and gaining self-sufficiency. We also have life skills, conflict de-escalation, depression, anxiety, anything that could help motivate a person towards their path of success. We also have sort of a library and a respite area where individuals who are on the street can access some cool air, especially during this heat, or respite from the weather. Next door, there's Path of Life Shelter, which we collaborate with. Path of Life has over 80 shelter beds, and men and women. And we work closely with them to ensure that anyone who comes in, if they need shelter, they can go in. Across following in the cul-de-sac is also the place, which is run by the County Behavioral Health, which are a few permanent supportive housing beds, primarily for those who have higher intense needs for mental health. We will be developing a bridge housing that's going to be coming on board. We are anticipating anywhere between, we're working with the architecture right now, 20 to 40 beds. And this is additional shelter beds for people to find bridge on their path to self-sufficiency and permanent housing. And we also have a collaboration with Helping Hearts for mental health beds in the cul-de-sac. Additionally, our Access Center next year is going to also be carved out with UCR Medical Clinic for individuals who are experiencing homelessness or poverty to access basic medical health care, which is so important. We know that people who are on the streets, if their basic health needs are not met, they deteriorate very quickly. So these are a lot of the services. And then right across the way is our pallet shelter community. We call the Emergency Riverside Village that CityNet operates on behalf of the city. We went into this agreement last December with a plethora of options for council to approve. These are 30 little mini homes, pallet shelters, and little at the time did we know that it would become a best practice model as COVID crept up on us, because it allows an individual to be in an isolated room and not be in a congregate shelter. So we were so very proud and happy of that project. Thus far, we had started it and commenced it in March. Our teams, including general services and our public utilities, our city manager's office, our fire, our Riverside police, and CityNet, our Office of Homeless Solutions, we all came together and commenced from January to March to pretty much from the ground on up, build it up with Pallet Corporation, which is the entity that delivers these little mini units, a true private and public partnership. We have 30 of them. And so far they're at full capacity. And we began the project in March. And since then, about 20 individuals were outreached from the street into these little mini homes and got connected to permanent housing from March to now. That is an amazing feat that we have worked very closely. 20 individuals that have gone into permanent housing. Of course, we have a lot more that are still in the shelter that we are working with. Our council also approved something called tenant-based rental assistance to help support these projects and shelter projects. Tenant-based rental assistance is essentially rental assistance from our housing authority that allows an individual to move into permanent housing and work with a landlord liaison to get into their own apartment building. This is really exciting. And if you go onto our website, you will see success stories where you will see individuals who have worked with our team holding a key in their hand saying, I'm going into my own very apartment. And please do check out our website. If you go into the city's website, Riverside, you will go ahead and click on Office of Homeless Solutions, and you could see all of those wonderful stories. I find it very inspiring as well that the clients allow us consent to take pictures into such a personal and private experience. And they do so because they know that they need to, and we need to continue to garner support for the important work of getting people off the street. So that is just a very high level picture of what happens when you call somebody or you call my office or contact 311, which is a great system you all know from the city, if you see someone who's experiencing homelessness or if there is an encampment. These are the services that we could connect them to. Those are city services. When you look at county services, we can also connect them to mental behavioral health, medical health, adult protection services, and a plethora of county services. We also have something called the PSET team, which is the Public Safety Engagement Team. This team is comprised of the code enforcement, the Riverside Police Department, CityNet outreach workers, which we contract with, as well as vendors or public works to clean up encampments that are for individuals who have already been asked to receive services. What happens is PSET understands that there is a genuine safety issue that the community experiences and a genuine hygiene issue. And our first form of addressing is ensuring that the team offers the outreach workers to the individual first. Knowing that their personal belongings is sacred, we offer storage. But then we also provide them with education as to what is going to be storage when they move into an apartment building, because the idea is getting people into self-sufficiency. So does a shopping cart belong in your apartment building? Not necessarily, right? So these are the tools. So what happens is we provide services, we provide shelter, we provide case management through PSET and storage, and then we'll go ahead and the team clean up any debris or unhygienic items to keep our community safe. We have Riverside Police Department as part of this because there are citations and arrests of certain individuals if we find that items are stolen or if there's damages or if it is on a private property or public property. Code enforcement will work with the owners to address the issue. So I look at it that addressing homelessness is two parts: provision of services, ensuring that the individual gets all the help that they need, and then also community impact and making sure that we're mitigating the impact into the community. That is what is happening on a local level. Most recently, we have received CARES funding, as you may know, over the past 2 months in our council meetings. Our city manager's office, our deputy city manager, Moises Lopez, went ahead and led the process for the CARES funding. And we found that majority of the community through the community survey had an interest in different kinds of plans for the funding, in small businesses, schools. Part of that was also the Office of Homeless Solutions and ensuring that we were getting folks off the street and rental assistance so that people don't fall into homelessness because they've lost their jobs. We were able to receive quite a bit of funding. And as part of that, we first began with a project called a MAP Home. MAP stands for Massachusetts Action Plan. We went ahead and coordinated this within just 2 weeks. Along the Massachusetts Street, across from our Hewland campus, there were 100 folks and several encampments. It was pretty bad. And we had worked for many years to get as many of those folks off of that strip. Well, with the CARES funding, which also had an emphasis on ensuring that individuals who are experiencing homelessness are also addressed, because remember, CDC asked folks to get quarantined to make sure they stay inside, while individuals experiencing homelessness who are unsheltered don't have a place to stay inside if there's no shelter. So we made it a priority to assist this population. And over the course of 2 weeks, we had PSET go out, engage with the individuals, let them know there will no longer be any opportunity in camp here. And as such, we went ahead and offered them a bridge shelter program. The bridge shelter program was a plethora of options, going into Path of Life shelter, going into our Pallets shelter, and then also funding specific motels to allow the individuals to feel comfortable in an isolated environment while they're working with their case manager and get connected to tenant-based rental assistance. So we are so proud to say that just within a week of planning this, we were able to completely remove all of the encampments and get folks connected to services. So if you go out there, it's completely different. It's like before and after. And now the businesses also feel very comfortable there. They are very grateful and thankful. And we'll also have a 6-prong approach to this that we did through best practices. We had outreach, shelter, permanent placement, safety, and also beautification, along with wraparound supportive services and case management. I'm proud to say that within 1 week of folks getting connected, one individual in particular got off the street into bridge housing and already got into permanent housing with a picture of himself in his apartment building. This tells us our programs and services are working. And the individual was so grateful. I had an opportunity to meet him and said, please say thank you to your city council, to your city administrators, and to the community who supports such programs. He also, I recently found, got a part-time job at Subway. So this individual is on the path to maybe one day becoming a homeowner. So that is one of the projects. The other projects that we had that we're working on is, well, over the course of the summer, we received 15 trailers from the governor's office as part of Big 13 cities. Big 13 cities are 13 cities that have a high dense population of unsheltered homeless that is really led by the mayors that go up to Sacramento and speak to the governor's team and inform them and advocate that we need additional funding, services, and support. Mayor Bailey has been such a great advocate of this, and he has worked with Mayor Garcetti and Mayor Libby Schaaf and many other big mayors from Stockton to San Diego, San Francisco, LA, Santa Ana, Anaheim, so on and so forth. As such, we receive quite a few funding that is one-time block grant and additional support. One of the support was receiving 15 trailers at no cost to the city. This was done primarily to enhance the isolation and quarantining of individuals experiencing homelessness in lieu of lack of shelter. We placed this in our airport and it with really great spacing and security. And the priority was provided to medically frail individuals who are elders, primarily those who may have lost their jobs and are exposed to the elements that health may be more compromised, and pregnant women. And we had all 15 trailers full. It was a great partnership, and CityNet operated it. We were able to get over 16, 17, because in some of the trailers, there were 2 individuals out from the streets, unsheltered, into a nice, cool trailer, beautiful trailers. They were brand new with nice microwaves and refrigerators and all of that, and provided them with respite and case management to work with CityNet and say, okay, you're out of the streets during this pandemic. Let's get you a housing plan so that when you're released from here, or discharged, you do not feel that you will be easily susceptible to this pandemic. A lot of folks got into permanent housing, and majority of them ended up being part of the county's Project Room Key. I will also say with the trailer project, we were able to support our local business, our airport cafe, which was across the way. CityNet was able to purchase the meals for the project from the airport cafe. So I like to say we kissed 2 birds with 1 pair of lips, not only supporting our Office of Homeless Solutions and individuals experiencing homelessness, but also supporting a local business during a pandemic.
Very good. Can I maybe ask a question?
Yes.
I'm curious. So in January, you do your essentially your audit relative to the number of homeless. Can you maybe describe the demographics of what that population looks like, the number of people that are homeless in the city at any given time, obviously, how many of them are children, how many are dealing or elderly, how many of them are dealing with are veterans or dealing with mental behavioral health issues? I'm just kind of curious. I think everybody has a certain perception as to what it may be, but I'm curious if you have any of those numbers and maybe can talk about that population.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have it on our website, and I have it on a PowerPoint. I actually have the wrong PowerPoint here, but I don't have it memorized. But I do know that our unsheltered population was 587, and we do have quite a few individuals who are veterans who have mental health, medical health. And I could aim to pull that up, but I don't want to take the time to take away from speaking.
Just broad numbers. I'm just kind of, as a percentage, I'm just kind of interested. Certainly with children, with veterans, I mean, there's certain populations, obviously. And I'll tell you, even at IVAR, I mean, there's a number of homeless people that I've unfortunately come to know. They have been around our office for years, and I know their names, and we interact occasionally. And it's been tragic to see some of them, some of which were very young. There was one young woman who was probably 18 or 19 when she first started sleeping in our parking lot, and I've seen her now for probably 4 or 5 years, and she'll disappear for several months and then she'll resurface and so forth. So anything you can share on that as far as the population and the demographics, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am currently looking at some of the information here. So within the city of Riverside, we did see that there was an increase from 2019. In 2019, our unsheltered population was 439. In 2020, it is 587. I will say that in terms of the entire PIT count, about 2,884 total sheltered and unsheltered individuals were assessed. Countywide, veterans, there was a 5% increase with about 112. With youth, we saw a 41% increase at 256. Chronically homeless, 29% decrease actually at 519. I'm currently looking through the entire document for the actual city of Riverside. So as folks ask some questions in the end, I'll be able to pull up that. But we do have our own delineation, and I'll get that to you.
Very good. Also, if anybody who's on the call right now or participating as a viewer, you want to ask questions, you can hop on the Q&A button, type up your question. We already have several questions queued up right now, and we'll get to those and ask Ms. Kaka as well. One of the questions that came through on the Q&A is, it has to do with services in San Bernardino County or Rancho Cucamonga. Maybe, I know you talked about the city of Riverside, the county of Riverside. I used to work in San Bernardino County for a few years, and I'm familiar with some of the structure, and it's very similar from county and city to city. Is that the case that you see in your counterparts in San Bernardino County?
Yes, I have not had an opportunity to look directly into their point in time count, but I do know that San Bernardino County does have their own COC, Continuum of Care, as I mentioned earlier, and that they also have their own sort of a community action plan. Their numbers are less than ours, and the county of Riverside, as you know, I represent the city of Riverside's Office of Homeless Solutions, but the county, I do know, has some partnering programs. There's also, there, I believe, is a Salvation Army out there, and other agencies like Lighthouse that also function out there as well.
Very good. Another question came through, and they asked, what percentage of the folks that you encounter on the homeless side refuse services, refuse help? I mean, what is it? Is it a large percentage, or is it, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And, it's a question that one person, it's a contextual question. One person may say, I am going to refuse services today, but tomorrow accept it. And tomorrow accept it, but only for 24 hours. So I will say it is a small population, but it is a loud population, right? So a more visible population. Individuals who have mental health, severe mental health, paranoia, schizophrenia, those individuals, or trauma, maybe, it takes a lot of supportive services, and progressive engagement is the terminology in clinical practices, that you need to continue to work with the individual and establish rapport and establish a trusting relationship. And so currently we don't necessarily have a census, because typically individuals who may be resistant tend to move along in different areas, but that is a wonderful question.
Good. Another question asked regarding, we see homeless populations oftentimes concentrated in certain areas. You'd mentioned the Massachusetts street project and kind of what's happened there. Are there some other areas in Riverside where you see concentration of homeless that the city's had to deal with?
Yes, absolutely. So just most recently, we had a concern regarding the Blaine in Iowa, the overpass by the 215. And this was quite interesting because it wasn't necessarily city jurisdiction. It involved Caltrans. And Caltrans was actually told pretty much from the state to hands off during the pandemic. And so we saw quite a few encampments. We certainly went and we offered services, but at the end of the day, it was not necessarily city property. And so I gave an update to our council just yesterday about this, that our Riverside Police Department, particularly Lieutenant Wagner, did an excellent job working with Caltrans and CHP to sort of garner their support and advocate that, look, we understand that right now, COVID, there's different policies and protocols, but we as a city do also believe that encampments could be potentially not the safest place for an individual experiencing homelessness. We'd rather offer them service and ensure that there is a good cleanup of the street. And so I'm happy to report that that happened last Friday. And I think we are one of the few cities, if not first cities, to really get Caltrans to respond during to their property during this COVID pandemic. And we believe we had about 4 to 5 individuals that accepted shelter, and there's about 4 roll-offs full of individuals that their storage was already stored. We were able to make capacity for their storage and then remove the trash and the debris. We also see quite a few places off of La Sierra, and also around the ETS, which is emergency sort of mental health area by Bonita Parkway. And what we're doing is we're working with the county very closely, because we understand that individuals experiencing homelessness will access services. And sometimes if service hours are closed, or if it's hard for them to go back to, a different community. So it's called low barrier. That's what you call it. We want to be able to create a low barrier, but we also want to be able to ensure that there is continuity of care.
Thank you. Some of the areas, and I know one, and I live reasonably close to it, is the Santa Ana riverbed area, where you see more permanent structures that are cobbled together for shelter. Is there any specific outreach along that area for people
Yes,
that
Mark.
are kind of entrenched?
Absolutely. And I have a whole bit about the Santa Ana River bottom that I was going to get to. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
glad
the frontier folks out there.
Yes, that has been a very, very big problem. And it's actually a co-problem, right? Because you also have different surrounding cities, and you also have county. It's a deep, deep sort of, it's the river bottom. So the city has been involved in many, many different kinds of outreach, even prior to me coming on board. There has been targeted housing opportunities with county behavioral health and our outreach to go out there, and similar to a map home, hey, we're going to outreach with you, we're going to engage with you, we're going to have services, but then at the same time, you're actually going to be offered a Section 8 or, permanent housing. We found that does have, I have been told by my outreach workers that area does have quite a few of the resistant population, and they're sort of hidden because of that. But we are not complacent about it. We continue to send our outreach, and especially during the pandemic, the city received, as part of the state, COVID funds for the Office of Homeless Solution of $1 million to address anything and all COVID and homeless related. So what we did was we slated additional outreach workers, and we slated also hygiene stations, porta potties, to sanitizing, PPE, things of that nature, that we went out. I believe we had a monthly, 3 or 4 consecutive monthly Department of Public Health, city outreach, animal control, behavioral health, a multidisciplinary, our Riverside PD or code enforcement public engagement team, to go out there as an all hands on deck, do a census, understand the folks out there, see what their needs are. And we did go ahead and connect many people out of that area, but there still remains quite a few individuals. And we are working with the county as they also receive their own pot of funding to see how we could work together and collaborate.
Very good. Regarding, by the very nature of being homeless, you're dealing with a transient population. Some cities have more resources than others. Obviously, the city of Riverside is the largest city in the county. It's the county seat. Do you see, or do you coordinate with other cities, or do you find other cities kind of directing homeless to Riverside or other areas to kind of relieve their city who may not have the resources, and kind of leading them to Riverside? Is that an issue or something you guys coordinate with each other?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is called regional coordination, and the city has actually been a lead in the regional coordination conversations. I don't know if you are aware of this, but we actually did go ahead and we had the forum last October. It was right prior to me coming on board, and it was a very successful summit slash forum. Several elected officials came. Our mayor spoke. We had a guest speaker. Our city managers led it, and we had the county sheriff department there. We had different elected officials from different cities, and it was sort of an all hands on deck. Every city and every nonprofit organization got to present to everybody, hey, these are the services that we're providing. This is how many folks, this is our data. This is what we see. This is what we plan to do in the future. And so we have been a lead. It was very successful. We did a convening this past January, which I was part of, with the city managers of that forum, saying, okay, now that we have had the summit, now that we know what's going on, let's all come together and see, number one, how we could strategically work together, because we do understand that people experiencing homelessness travel from one place to the other. And let's see how we could coordinate and participate and collaborate collectively, so that it's not just the city of Riverside as the county seat. So that's a very valid question, Mark. It's a question that many communities also deal with, whether it's LA, whether it's Orange County. Here in the city of Riverside, we did have our convening, and we sort of worked with different cities and tasked and provide some ideas about what are some of the things you're doing and how we could collaborate. I am proud to say, out of that, we have a very good partnership with the city of Corona, primarily with their homeless lead that they put to hire, Karen Roper. I know her from Orange County, and they actually have done a lot. They've created a strategic plan. We have had our housing plan since last year, Housing First Plan, which we follow. And City of Corona is actually, their council approved a 30 shelter bed and a few PSH units. So we definitely see Corona stepping up and taking part. As for other cities, yes, we still see that there is a need of improvement there. Absolutely. We do often see that there are individuals that come from other parts of the county into our Hewland campus and access of services. And of course, in the spirit of philanthropy, we're going to offer them basic services. But we're also going to do is understand that best practices incorporates connecting people to their family systems, and reunification is a big part of that. And so I have had the opportunity to work with my staff to get folks back to the community and feel connected back to their family. And this is things that we are working with, with other cities like Harupa Valley, Moreno Valley, and of course, the eastern side. They're so sort of far out, working with Palm Springs and of such nature. So to your question, yes, that remains an area of improvement, and we are working hard to get other cities to participate as much as the city of Riverside.
I mean, given the complexity of this issue and the fact that it's so layered with different agencies, departments, funding sources, I think that this is a great thing for different cities and the counties and every government agency to work together. It's not going to be solved individually by one city or county, so that's encouraging. One of the questions that came in asked about the tiny homes that you talked about. Is there any way that people can see what those tiny homes look like? Or is there anything on your website maybe that talks about them or shows photographs?
Oh, absolutely. We have it on our city's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We did when we launched it, there was actually Riverside TV that went ahead and did a full coverage of it. So you could certainly find that on Facebook, Twitter. I could follow up, Mark, by sending the links to you guys. We had a really good, I wouldn't call it a ribbon opening, but we did have our council members show up and speak a little bit about it. And it was really exciting. The little mini pallet homes, there's 2 beds in them. CityNet did an excellent job designing it to feel like a home. They're HVAC connected, and folks are very happy. They feel that they have their own place, and it's a really good model to help people move into their own place, going from a congregate shelter to a non-congregate shelter. So you can find that on our website as well.
Very good. One of the questions was asking about drug use and drug paraphernalia that may be left behind, or dealing with needles and so forth. Is there a specific agency or group to call within the county or within the city to deal with something like that?
Yes, we have had quite a few conversations with the Department of Public Health in regards to sort of a needle well, what they were talking about is a needle exchange program, and how to ensure that there's safe harm reduction practices. Um, you know, we when I worked in Santa Ana, this was a huge issue, primarily because of the opioid crisis there. I do believe we have an issue here, and I believe that the Department of Public Health would have more information. One of the things that we do is when we do see individuals experiencing homelessness that do have a drug addiction, our outreach workers, case managers, CityNet, what they are going to do is connect them to the chemical dependency programs and services that are offered by the counties, county programs, behavioral health programs. So we would do a good warm handoff. And I'd like to actually transition and provide you with the answers to what you were asking earlier in regards to the city of Riverside data. I was able to pull it up. So in terms of the point in time count, we had 587 total unsheltered, chronically homeless 105. We were able to see that in terms of gender, we saw males experiencing more than females. We saw that about 359 of them were male. In terms of race and ethnicity, which was also calculated, we saw quite a good amount of individuals were majority white in multiple races, and then also African American. We saw that in terms of actual physical disability, that 66 individuals experienced that or answered to that. Mental health, about 84, PTSD, 63, substance abuse, 75, veterans, as you had asked earlier, 30. And we saw that quite a few of the individuals were seniors, about 36. I will be happy to send this link to you. It's also already public through UCR, which helped participate to calculate the data with the county. So I just really wanted to make sure that I followed up on that question that you asked earlier.
Thank you. There's another question that says, has the mayor's challenge to the churches in the community to take in homeless or and work with the homeless, has that been in any way successful? Are you seeing anything grow from that?
Yeah, absolutely. We are so very grateful for the mayor's advocacy in putting together the collaboration with the church community. And I believe the mayor just participated in a HUD webinar by Ben Carson on mustard seeds series, which also incorporates best practices on how to work with faith-based. As you know, the Grove is a beautiful community, a faith-based community that was pioneered with the collaboration of the mayor's office a few years ago and the Office of Homeless Solutions. They have assisted several individuals. I got an opportunity to go, and the little houses are so beautiful. People feel inspired and they're able to get on self-sufficiency. One of the things I will say is I'm currently working with quite a few of the church providers on the trailers that we have. Our airport trailer project completed in August, and we still have those trailers. So currently there's a few churches who are interested in taking a trailer or two in their property to sort of help any individuals that come to their door, provide them housing, provide them food, and also kind of keep it as a gatekeeper of the church. So we're sort of working through all that right now. There's a lot of semantics to it. And before I forget, I also want to mention that as part of the collaboration that we've been doing with churches, there's also Love Your Neighborhood initiative that is going strong, and outreach all throughout. Churches are also providing a lot of donations. We have shifted our donation model, rather than folks just simply, especially during the pandemic, going out, passing out food where, you need to be extra careful. Now we're creating a more structured environment where you could sign up and actually work with our providers to get them the meals needed.
You just mentioned COVID and how COVID has affected that specific issue regarding food distribution. Are there any other impacts that COVID has had relative to the services you provide and what you're doing maybe differently now?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually was asked to speak at a panel with UCR Extension about a couple of months ago. I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to watch that. It was also with Path of Life and the county's homeless lead as well, and also Gabriel Maldonado from True Evolution. And we were a panel that essentially talked about how COVID has impacted the services. I will say this, we did see an increase of individuals on Massachusetts due to, we believe, COVID, because we did a census back in February and another census in April, and we saw an uptick. This is one of the reasons why we utilized our CARES funding for the MAP Home project to get people housed and to clean. What we also saw that individuals did request to be housed more. I know there was a question that earlier indicated individuals who refused shelter. Some individuals actually shifted. Those who have refused in the past said, you know what, I'm scared. I don't want to get sick. Please help me get into a place and shelter. You know, you have to also realize that everyone's asked to stay home. But what do you do when you don't have a home to go to, right? And so it's almost a blessing in disguise. And we did receive quite a good chunk of funding from the state. They are one-time block grants, so that is a challenge on sustainability. But our team has been very creative, and our city manager's office has been leading the initiative. And our council has been quite supportive. So we were able to expand several services. Just an example, hygiene stations, porta potties, not even on the river bottom, but also at the Hewland campus. Outreach workers, we dedicated 2 additional outreach workers to specific COVID issues. PPE, making sure that they went out, provided water bottles, did an entire mask, distribution, etc. What we also did was we expanded on our rental assistance program, which is very important because we are working with fair housing and found that people were calling in to say, hey, I'm going to lose my apartment. I need help. That data is also on our data dashboard online as well. And then also I do want to inform you that we were also able to expand our shelter during this time through the MAP Home and the bridge. So that's been very helpful.
Fantastic. I want to be mindful of your time. Maybe just have one last question. One of the questions that came through is, what would you suggest realtors to do? I mean, this is a complex, big issue. Do you have any immediate advice for realtors or citizens in Riverside or any of the surrounding areas? What can we do as citizens and realtors?
Mark, what an excellent question. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, number one, I think educating yourselves, which you're doing here today, and ensuring that you know what resources to call. If you see an encampment or if you see an individual who's experiencing homelessness, feel free to call 311. We work very closely as an interdepartmental, also supporting our projects and programs and services. Back in December, our city council meeting lasted up until 1:30 in the morning. I don't know if all of you guys remember, and it was because we needed to make a decision. Council actually needed to make a decision at the different options of shelter and housing. So housing first, we believe in housing first. Development of affordable housing is very crucial. You can have all the shelter in the world, but unless you have a place to get them to go. So we had the St. Michael's that passed. That was really exciting. So for realtors, really just understanding, as you know, the importance of housing and having stability to support our work in affordable housing and access to programs and services.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot here today. You've got a lot of great information. We're going to have this recording on IVAR's website within the next day or two. In addition, we're going to have a page dedicated to a number of the services you've outlined. So if any of the people in our membership have questions, they can be able to get resources and the website information that you've provided. So it's been great, and I really appreciate your time here today. With that, we'll conclude our meeting for today. Hafsa, thank you so much. You're doing a very challenging but worthwhile job. Keep up the good work. And we're very happy that you're here in the city and working on behalf of all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great. Thank you.